the Democratic Republic of Sports. The Sportsocracy with ESPN Asheville hosts Tank Spencer and Jeremy Greene.
Welcome back into the Sportsocracy, continuing with the off-season files. And next up, the Tennessee Titans. We are live from the Wicked Weed studio, wickedweedbrewing.com. Drink different. I'm Tank Spencer, and he's Jeremy Greene. Next up on the off-season files, the Tennessee Titans. This is a team that, they don't have a whole lot of cap space to work with right now. And they have a lot of free agents that they need to take care of.
They have a few. It's not a lot.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think Jadeveon Clowney is that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he wasn't great this past year.
No,
he didn't really help
wasn't.
the pass rush as they expected he would.
No, and he's an overrated pass rusher in my opinion. I don't think he's going to get the level of money on the open market that he thinks he does. Mm-hmm. The guy that I fear they're going to lose is Corey Davis, and I also fear they're going to lose Jonnu Smith.
Yes.
Because Jonnu Smith is going to be popular. Because he's a guy that's really well thought of in the NFL. Very high-level tight end, very movable. He's a multiple tight end, whereas there are not a lot of those in the NFL. I think he's going to get a deal that might surprise you at how big it is, and it might be from the Titans. The Titans have a ton of restructurable deals. They're not in the cap hell that it appears that they are, because they could move money around in a way that very few other teams can. Mm-hmm. They don't have hardly any deals that are pegged out. You know, they can push money on Tannehill. They can push money on Derrick Henry. They have a lot of things they could do to get under the cap and make this team better.
I think the edge rusher spot is the big thing they have to figure out. That's the reason that they brought in Jadeveon Clowney, and that didn't work out. I don't think he had a sack all year long, did he?
No.
I don't believe so. Harold Landry was a guy that I really liked coming out of college, and he hasn't panned out to be the force that I thought he would be getting to the quarterback. That's the number one thing to me for their defense that they got to figure out.
Is an edge guy?
Yeah.
I think that's a draft thing. They're picking in a very good spot to need an edge guy, because you're going to have Greg Rousseau, who seems to be falling in about that 20 to 25 range now. Mm-hmm. Zaven Collins, who I really like. Tennessee's one of the landing spots I really like for him, because I think he could be a force on this defense. And there's Jalen Phillips out of Miami, another guy that could be a solid edge rusher. I think they're going to be able to take care of that in the draft. My question is, what are you going to do with that second receiver spot? Are you going to pay Corey Davis, or are you going to take your chances? Because you got to have somebody that is enough of a threat to keep A.J. Brown as dangerous as he is. Mm-hmm. One of the things that made A.J. Brown's one of my favorite receivers in the NFL. And what makes him look as good as he is that you had Corey Davis on the other side that you can't just let him go.
Right.
You have to have a legitimate second option. This is a play-action predicated offense. Derrick Henry's going to be fine. I'm not overly concerned about the line. I mean, Taylor Lewan coming back will help. You've got some good pieces there, but it would scare me if they lose both Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis.
If they decided not to pay Corey Davis, I feel like there are at least guys that are available in this wide receiver class in free agency.
There are. I'm afraid that you're going to have to overpay. I think the high-end guys are not necessarily going to get as much as you think. Mm-hmm. Like, I've heard $20 million on Allen Robinson. Bullshit. I'll believe that when I see it.
Okay.
Chris Godwin, same thing. But I think there's going to be a middle tier. That Corey Davis, I'm trying to think of other guys, Will Fuller tier, that those guys are going to get markedly more than you think they are. Mm-hmm. And for them to get an apt replacement, they may have to overpay. I'll tell you another guy I really like with them, and I don't even know what made me think of this, Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State. That's a guy that if they could find a way to get him in the third round, I think he could be the second with A.J. Brown.
Okay.
The problem with him is that he doesn't separate really well, because he's not overly fast. He's not a huge-bodied guy. He's big enough, and he's fast enough, but no, he's not going to blaze by you. Mm-hmm. He could be an apt Corey Davis replacement. He's a guy I like a lot. He was on the Chase Claypool list.
Yeah, the Tennessee Titans are a team that, I think they've got solid pieces to continue to be a contender in that division. Ryan Tannehill obviously has been better than anybody expected that he would be when they got him from Miami. That's why they paid him $30 million a year to stick around. Derrick Henry is just, I mean, he's like a god among running backs in the NFL.
He's very good.
Mainly because of the high usage. I mean, I don't remember the stat off the top of my head, but, I mean, he was number 1 in carries in the NFL by a marked margin.
He's the highest usage running back in the NFL. And he's going to continue to be. My fear is that I don't know how well this deal is going to age because Father Time is undefeated, and running backs, when they hit about 2,000 carries, tend to drop off.
Right.
And we're quickly approaching that for Mr. Henry.
Right.
I think they're going to be fine. I look at the defense. A guy we hadn't talked about is Jayon Brown. Jayon Brown's another guy, an inside linebacker for Tennessee that I think is going to get more money than you would suspect he will. He fits very well with the Jets, who have a lot of money. He fits reasonably well with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have a lot of money. And I'm not sure they're going to bring back Joe Schobert. I just don't know how he fits in this new scheme. They have pieces that you don't want to lose. In my opinion, a successful offseason for the Titans is you find a way to keep 2 of Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Jadeveon Clowney, and Jayon Brown. If you find a way to keep 2 of them, I think you've had a successful offseason. You get 3, you've had a damn good one. Because this team is, I mean, they're right there. They just need to draft better. This is not a team that has drafted really well outside of A.J. Brown. I mean, basically, we're 1 year out from the 2020 draft. There's virtually no one left. Wilson has been a disaster that I think they're going to move on from this offseason. You know, Christian Fulton was fine. He only played 6 games. When he played, he was, I mean, I think he's a usable piece going forward. But then you get into like Darrington Evans and Laurel Murchison, and it's just depth guys. And when you really look at their draft history in the last 5 years, there's just not a lot of hits. There's a lot of, they're fine. He's good. They need some home runs. They've had one of those outside of Derrick Henry, and it's A.J. Brown.
Yeah. So at 22, as you talked about, Zaven Collins would be a great addition to this team, especially if
Collins
you're going to lose
is the A+ if they lose Jayon Brown. If Jayon Brown and or Jadeveon Clowney leave, Zaven Collins is the home run because he's very multiple. And, you know, in 4-man fronts, he can play inside. In 3-man fronts, he can play outside. That would be a hell of a little utility piece. That's the A+ grade. That's what Tennessee can do that when I put my grades out. You do that, the rest of it, you hit singles and doubles, you're probably going to be in that A range. Outside of that, you know, Greg Rousseau's a guy that I'm really high on. I don't know how he fits in a 3-4 because he's incredibly tall. You know, there are some guys that think he's, you know, the quick twitch on him is good enough that it will mitigate the fact that he's that tall. I don't know that I agree with that. I think I like him better as a 4-3 with his hand in the dirt. But there are guys. You know, the good thing for the Titans is they have a position of where they're drafting where there are guys that will fill their needs. There are several teams that are in a position that you need X and there are no X in that position of the draft.
Right.
The Titans are not one of them.
Right. You'd be overdrafting or whatever, reaching to try to get somebody in that window. You talked about Tylan Wallace possibly with the 3rd-round pick. What about that 2nd-round pick that they got at 53?
I have Andre Cisco. That was a guy that they could look at there. That would be high level for me because Andre Cisco is a guy I had at the back end of the 1st round. He got hurt. He's fallen a little bit. And I understand they have Kenny Vaccaro, but I think Andre Cisco next to Kevin Byard would really shore up the secondary. And it might mitigate some of the fact that Ryan Tannehill doesn't do his best work when it's all on him. To me, if they build this defense up with the running game that they have, and the running game's not going to go away, and the play-action passing game's not going to go away, because Derrick Henry's not going to fall off a cliff in a year. You'll see the regression coming with him. This is like Adrian Peterson. He's just built different than other running backs. It's not like the Le'Veon Bell syndrome where he's just going to show up one day and go, whoa, he sucks. That's not how the regression on Derrick Henry is going to happen. So to me, I'm focusing more on the defense. I look at the offense and go, it kind of is what it is. I mean, I want that receiver opposite A.J. Brown. Other than that, I'm not necessarily rushing to invest heavily in a receiver. I don't think they need to. They don't throw enough.
The problem with the Tennessee Titans for me is that they're the number one team in this division, and they're quickly falling off of that line.
But it's not really anything they're doing.
No,
I feel like the Colts have passed them,
Mm-hmm.
but they're still good.
Yes.
This is still a very good team.
Yes, but my point here is that it's going to get harder in this division. You don't know what's going to happen with Jacksonville, with Urban Meyer taking over there and them getting the number one pick, with Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson, whichever one they decide to go through. I still am not buying that. But, the Jacksonville Jaguars have money to spend. They're going to get the number one quarterback in this draft. And I see a path where Tennessee can fall to the third best team in this division in quick order. It's not going to happen this year. I think they'll probably fall into 2 this year, and then they could easily be 3 in a year or 2.
They could, or they could continue to be the best team in this division.
Mm-hmm.
None of those would shock me. Wouldn't shock me in the least. But this is a team that, and maybe it's because I'm the draft guy, you have to draft better.
Mm-hmm.
There are deficiencies on this roster that I can directly attribute to busty draft picks. You're going to have to figure out something at right tackle. Why? Because right now you're starting Ty Sambrello, who I think's played for 46 teams in the NFL.
Right.
Because you missed on Isaiah Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't read the red flags. You thought you were – and I have this problem with John Robinson is every once in a while he thinks he's smarter than everybody. The Isaiah Wilson thing, this surprised none of us.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody that did that did player profiles or anything like that, when you asked about character on him, immature was in block red letters on my profile of him last year. Not surprising.
Right.
Now, how deep it got, that might have been a little surprising.
Right.
Trying to jump out of a second-story balcony, that's a little more than immature.
Yeah, you never would have expected, or at least I would never have expected, because Isaiah Wilson is a Georgia guy, and I'm a Georgia fan in the college football season, and I felt like this is a guy that could work, but he does have some issues, and you did not realize that it was going to get this bad, getting pulled over for a DUI, having the run-in with the cops at the party, all of that, and then being suspended for reasons unknown later in the season. And now he's not going to be back with the team.
No, this is done.
Yeah, and so you just completely punted a first-round draft pick last year, which is not good. I mean, you can't – yeah, exactly. You cannot do that in the NFL. Overall team needs – they need an edge rusher. They've got to figure out how to be able to put pressure on the quarterback, something that they haven't been able to do for 2 years now, maybe longer.
Edge is definitely the biggest need. I just think they're going to be able to attack that in the draft.
Mm-hmm. A cornerback as well. Got to have an offensive lineman.
I'm not as sold. You got Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jenkins and Christian Fulton and Desmond King. Mm-hmm. A corner, to me, is not necessarily a need for them.
Mm-hmm. Somewhere in the secondary.
No. I like the idea of replacing Kenny Vaccaro because I'm not as sold on Kenny Vaccaro as other people are. Mm-hmm. I've never thought he was as good as others did.
I was really high on him when he was in New Orleans, but
I wasn't. I never have been.
Right.
I've always thought he's more of a name than he is a player.
Mm-hmm.
But Desmond King's a free agent going into this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
I think they will bring him back, and I think they're fine in the secondary. Like I said, replacing Kenny Vaccaro would be a luxury. It's not necessarily a necessity. Mm-hmm. In my current mock draft, I just have Andre Cisco sitting there, and he would fit nicely with Kevin Byard.
How shocked would you be to see the Tennessee Titans win this division this next year?
Not at all. I think it's a 50-50 split with them in Indianapolis.
How shocked would you be to see them as the second-place team in this division and just barely miss the playoffs?
That would probably surprise me more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see many paths to them missing the playoffs.
I don't either.
I think this is a team that's safely – you might be the last team that gets in. You might be a wild card. I think this is a playoff team. And I don't look at that many teams before the offseason's done. Now, there's teams like the Jets and the Jaguars and the Colts that have a ton of money that my complete opinion on these teams may change. I don't tend to wholesale change my opinion based on free agent acquisitions. Most guys that you go out and sign in free agency, there's a reason that they hit the market. There's a deficiency, there's an age issue, there's a scheme problem, whatever the case may be. So I don't tend to wholesale change things based on that. I would say it would shock me markedly more if the Titans missed the playoffs than if they won the division.
Mm-hmm. As it stands right now, I could see their ceiling being 12 wins, but their floor is 9, and that's shooting low for me. I think they're definitely in that 10-6 conversation, just as we saw, that being the baseline for making the playoffs this year.
I'll tell you, just an aside, another thing I would like to see them do just for longevity purposes is a running back that could take some carries away from Derrick Henry. Mm-hmm. Darrington Evans went to App State, real close to where we are. I like the kid a lot. He's not a down-in, down-out replacement. I would like to see somebody that can –
some kind of a pass-catching back?
Not even that. I think Darrington Evans can be that.
Yeah.
I want to see somebody that if Derrick Henry needs because there were a lot of times last year that I looked at Derrick Henry and just thought, he's gassed and still in the game.
Right.
He would come off the sideline sometimes and look like a used-up hooker. and I like, if you had anybody that could take carries away from him, mm-hmm. I mean, obviously he's going to get ridiculous amounts of touches. Mm-hmm. Gassing him to that point, I don't think is doing great things for the back end of that contract. Right. Let me say it that way.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Offseason Files. The Tennessee Titans get a lot of options in this offseason. I'm Tank Spencer. He's Jeremy Greene.
Yeah.
You are in the Sportsocracy. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can follow all of our offseason previews on demand right here. Once again, we are in the Wicked Weed studio, wickedweedbrewing.com. Drink different. We'll see you next time.